The stars always looked different when death approached. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the patrol ship Liberty, staring at the sensor readouts with rising dread. 847 alien warships were advancing toward the human colonies. Each vessel was triple the size of anything humanity had ever constructed, and each bristled with enough firepower to obliterate entire cities. More contacts from the outer stations. The Cum station. Her voice was calm, but Jake saw her trembling hands as she typed. Mining Station 7 just went offline. That's the fourth in 2 hours. Jake said nothing. What was there to say? The Zelrian Empire had finally decided to end humanity, and a single patrol ship couldn't change that. The Liberty had a crew of 30 and weapons suited for fighting pirates, not armadas. Against nearly 1,000 alien ships, they might as well throw stones. From the back of the bridge, Chief Engineer Pete Collins looked up, sweat beading his pale face. Captain, I'm reading enormous power surges from those ships. These aren't just warships, they're planet killers. Jake walked to the main display, which showed red blips swarming through the Kepler system. They moved in flawless formation, the largest ships at the center, smaller ones shielding the flanks. It was awful and mesmerizing, like a thunderstorm crawling across the plains. How long until they reach New Denver? Jake asked. Glanced at her console, eyes dark with concern. 18 hours if they stay on course. Port Harrison's next, maybe 6 hours. Jake thought of the 2 million people living on New Denver. Families, children, elderly colonists, who had spent their lives building a world far from Earth. They had trusted the fleet to protect them. But the closest human reinforcements were 3 weeks away. These aliens would be done in less than 1 day. Sir, Pete said quietly, we should run. Jump to hyperspace. Warn Earth Command. Maybe they'll send reinforcements. More ships won't help, Jake replied, gesturing at the data. Even the smallest Zelthrian cruiser outguns our biggest battleship. Even if Earth sent every ship it has, it wouldn't matter. Silence fell on the bridge, broken only by the soft beeping of monitors and the quiet hum of life support. Jake stared at the advancing red dots, fury and helplessness boiling within him. For 3 centuries, humanity had explored the stars. They built colonies, met friendly species, learned to coexist. But the Zelthrians weren't interested. In peace, they had conquered 12 species in 100 years, turning planets into slave worlds or reducing them to ash. Now it was humanity's turn, Captain Amy said suddenly, her voice edged with surprise. Something strange on long-range sensors. Jake rushed to her station. What kind of strange? There's a ship, a big one. Just appeared near Kepler 4. That's the gas giant. Her fingers moved quickly, scanning. Sir, I think. It's human. That's not possible. We're the only human ship in this system. I know. But look. She brought up a new view. Near the massive planet, a single appeared. Far smaller than the alien warships, but huge by human standards. Over 2 kilometers long, Pete leaned in. Computer can't classify it. It's not in any known ship registry. Jake stared at the anomaly. A human ship, appearing out of nowhere. Just as humanity faced extinction, it could be a trick. Sensor failure. But something in his gut said otherwise. Try to contact them, he ordered. Amy sent hails on every known frequency. Minutes passed. Nothing but static. No response, sir. Either they don't hear us or they don't want to answer. What about the alien fleet? Have they noticed it? Pete checked. They've seen it. Still moving forward? They don't seem concerned. Jake didn't blame them. 1 ship against 800? It was suicide. Maybe they assumed it was a converted freighter on a kamikaze run, but something about that didn't sit right. Jake had spent 15 years in space. He trusted his instincts. This ship didn't feel like desperation. It felt like something different. Keep watching it, Jake ordered. Keep trying to reach them. The red blips kept coming now, just 17 hours from New Denver. The mystery ship began to move, drifting away from the gas giant, headed straight for the Zelrian fleet. Jake Morrison had witnessed many things during his patrol career, but never what was about to unfold. Out in the black between stars, the vessel moved unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Most ships relied on basic thrust propulsion, slow turns, careful navigation. But this one flowed through space like liquid, banking and gliding as though gravity and inertia were mere suggestions. "Amy, any clearer scans?" Rodriguez frowned. "The computer can't decide. One moment it says the hull's steel, the next it's made of unknown elements." Pete looked baffled. "Power readings fluctuate wildly. Sometimes it's a normal fusion drive. Then it spikes beyond anything we've recorded." Jake moved to the display again. The ship was still advancing, but its shape was odd. When he looked directly at it, it seemed like a standard warship's sleek hull, gun ports. But when he looked away and glanced back, it seemed different, larger, changing. "Is it altering shape?" Jake asked. "I don't know," Amy replied. "The sensors show conflicting data. It's like it's their end, not there." And far across the system, on the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Kether watched it too. The fleet surged onward toward the human colonies. The Zelthrian commander had eradicated 12 species across his long and brutal career. Humans would be the 13th. Admiral Cathar, tall and gaunt like all his kind, stood with arms clasped. Behind his back, his gray skin glistened under the bridge lights. His large black eyes, capable of seeing in near total darkness, remained fixed on the main display. His uniform gleamed with rows of medals, each one a silent tribute to a species that no longer existed. "Admiral," said his tactical officer, "a single human vessel is approaching our formation." Kether glanced at the screen. "We're alone." Ship crept closer to his armada of 800 warships. He made a dry, rasping sound, something that might have been laughter if Zelthrians were capable of such things. "One ship? The humans must be more desperate than I imagined. Likely a cargo vessel packed with explosives, or a patrol ship sent to die in vain." "Shall we destroy it, Admiral?" "Not yet. Let it come. I want to witness whatever pitiful tactic they've conjured." He had fought countless battles, but never had he seen a ship move like this. The vessel twisted through space without visible propulsion. Stranger still, it seemed to grow larger as it drew near, something that should not have been possible. Back aboard the Liberty, Jake and his crew watched the enigmatic ship in awe. It was now just an hour away from the enemy fleet, still accelerating, still refusing to slow. "Sir," said Pete Collins, getting some bizarre readings from the hull. "What kind of bizarre?" "It's ... moving, like it's alive. The damage, if it had any, is repairing itself mid-flight." Amy turned from her console, her eyes wide with realization. "Captain, I think I know what that ship is." Dick frowned. "What do you mean?" "I ran the design through our historical database. The system found a partial match, Captain. That might be the HSV Eternal." Jake's blood ran cold. Every member of the human fleet knew that name. The Eternal was a prototype warship, lost 3 centuries ago during humanity's first encounter with a hostile species. The crew of 200 had been declared missing, presumed dead. "That can't be," Jake muttered. "The Eternal vanished hundreds of years ago. Everyone aboard is dead." "I know it sounds impossible," Amy said, "but look at this." She brought up the matching schematics. "The frame, the contours, it's nearly identical. The Eternal was built with tech we still don't fully understand." Pete pulled up the archived specs. It was equipped with something called adaptive hull technology. The ship could supposedly morph and self-repair during combat. Jake looked at the screen with new eyes. If this was truly the Eternal, then maybe, just maybe, humanity wasn't finished yet. Legend said it was the most advanced ship humanity had ever designed, capable of destroying fleets. But the legend also said its crew had perished long ago. Admiral Kether was growing agitated. The human ship had entered weapons range, yet his scans revealed nothing clear. No weapon systems, no defensive fields. "Fire a warning shot," he ordered. "If they wish to die, let's help them along." One of his heavy cruisers released a massive bolt of plasma enough to level a mountain, screamed through the void, and struck the mystery ship, and vanished. Not deflected, not absorbed. Gone like it had never existed at all. For the first time in his long military career, Kether felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Fear. The human ship kept coming, now accelerating at impossible speeds. No known vessel could move that fast without ripping itself apart, yet this one remained intact. Speeding directly toward the heart of the Zelthrian fleet, Jake Morrison watched from the Liberty, heart pounding. It was minutes away from the enemy. In moments, either the ship would be destroyed or something extraordinary would happen. The gap between it and the alien warships narrowed with terrifying speed. Then, without warning, a voice filled the Liberty's bridge, not from speakers, not from comms, came from nowhere and everywhere. Echoing like a memory wrapped in a dream, Jake froze as the words formed. Too clear, too perfect. This is Commander Lisa Park of the HSV Eternal, Colonial Defense. Protocol 7 is now active. All civilian vessels maintain safe distance. Amy stared at her console, stunned. Sir, that didn't come through our comms. It's broadcasting from all directions at once. Pete double-checked his systems, visibly shaken. Captain, our records say Lisa Park died 300 years ago. She was the Eternal's original commander when it disappeared. Cold dread crept down Jake's spine. Dead people didn't send transmissions. Dead captains didn't pilot ghost ships. And yet somehow, Commander Park had spoken. Amy frantically tried to send a reply. Working her station, transmitting on every known frequency. No response, she said. It's like she can't hear us, or she's choosing not to. The mysterious vessel pressed on toward the Zelthrian fleet. Jake could now see it clearly on the screen. It was definitely the Eternal, but it looked different. Unlike the clean, metallic lines in history books, this ship seemed to flow its hull, shifting like liquid alloy. Strange lights pulsed and crawled across its surface in alien patterns. They were almost beautiful. And when Jake stared too long, they made his head ache. Admiral Kether stood stiffly on the bridge of his flagship, listening to the human transmission with rising fury. He had shattered 12 civilizations, reduced entire empires to ashes. He would not be intimidated by a single ship, no matter how unnatural it seemed. All ships in the Vanguard formation. Prepare to fire, he barked. I want that vessel. Eliminated immediately. His tactical officer hesitated, uncertainty in his eyes. Admiral, our sensors still can't identify the ship's weapons or shielding. Perhaps we should proceed with caution. Kether's voice crackled. With rage, we have 40 heavy cruisers on the front line. Each one can level a moon. One human ship, regardless of its tricks, cannot stop us. He turned to face his crew, eyes blazing. Fire everything. Reduce that vessel to atoms. The Zelthrian Vanguard obeyed. 40 warships unleashed their fury at once. Space between them and the Eternal, lit up with death-blazing energy bolts, hurled forward like a storm of falling suns. Each beam carried the force to vaporize cities. Together, they should have erased the human ship from the universe. Jake watched. From the Liberty, breath held, waiting for the Eternal to be torn apart. No ship, no matter how advanced, could endure that. Even Earth's most powerful battleships would have been shredded in seconds. But the Eternal did not die. The plasma streams neared the strange vessel and slowed. Jake blinked. Surely his eyes were deceiving him. The beams letal, blazing were. Slowing in space, crawling like syrup, until they simply stopped, motionless, suspended in the void. Amy, are you seeing this? He asked. Yes, sir, she replied in disbelief. Yeah, they're frozen, just hanging there like lightning caught in amber. Pete Collins stared at his console, completely baffled. Captain, the energy levels are off the scale. Something's stopping those plasma blasts mid-flight. But I can't explain how. Then the impossible turned terrifying. The suspended energy beams began to move backward, slowly at first, then faster, accelerating in reverse toward the alien ships that had fired them. But now they were brighter. It's more intense, supercharged with something unnatural. The first bolt struck a Zelfon cruiser. The ship didn't explode. It didn't even break apart. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it floated in formation. The next it was gone like it had never been there. Beam after beam struck the front line of the Zelthrian fleet. Each impact erased another cruiser from reality. No debris. No energy signatures. Just void. In under 2 minutes. 40 heavy warships and over 50,000 Zelthrian soldiers vanished into nothingness. Admiral Cathar stared at the tactical screen. His face drained of color. The instruments showed nothing where his fleet had stood. No fragments, no heat trails. It was as if those ships had never been built. "How is this possible?" he whispered aboard the Liberty. The crew watched in stunned silence. The voice of Commander Park returned, echoing across the bridge. But it no longer sounded like just her. There were other tones woven through. It like a chorus speaking as one. Warning. Retreat immediately, or face total annihilation. Humanity will not fall today. Jake realized he hadn't been breathing. The voice wasn't just loud. It carried weight, pressure. It felt like the sound itself had mass. It was the sound of judgment. "Amy," he said hoarsely. She nodded. "Sir, energy levels around the Eternal are rising fast." Pete checked his data again and shook his head, eyes wide. "Captain, space itself is reacting. You're detecting gravitational flux, dimensional warping. It's like the laws of physics are breaking down around that ship." Admiral Cathar stood frozen, the weight of command pressing down on him. He had two options: retreat and carry the disgrace of fleeing from a single human ship, or order his remaining 800 warships to strike back and face a nightmare that defied reason. He looked again at the void where 40 of his finest vessels had existed just minutes ago, now gone like dust in the wind. Admiral Cathar looked again at the strange human vessel, the one that had made 40% of his warships vanish without firing a single visible shot. Pride and fear clashed within his alien heart as he stood at the edge of a decision that would determine the fate of his entire fleet. He made his choice. The Zelthrian commander had lived his whole life under the banner of war. He had been taught from youth that retreat was disgraceful, and disgrace was a fate worse than death. His species would rather fall in battle than live with shame. All ships. He spoke into the fleet-wide comms, converge on the human vessel. Maximum firepower. We will destroy this enemy, or die trying. 800 alien warships turned and began to encircle the Eternal. Each one bristled with weapons massive and terrifying. Together, they carried the destructive power to scour entire worlds from existence. Energy surged across their hulls as weapon systems powered. Up in unison, on the Liberty, Jake Morrison watched the unfolding storm with dread. "Amy," he said tightly, "how many ships are converging?" "All of them, sir," she replied. "Every vessel is forming into attack formation." Pete Collins looked up, his face pale. "Captain, if the Eternal could only handle 40 ships, how can it stop 800? Jake had no answer. He stared at the solitary vessel as the largest armada in recorded history closed in from every direction. The Eternal looked tiny, fragile, like a stone in a sea of fire. Then something began to shift. The ship's hull started to ripple and bend like mercury, flowing as if it were alive. Curves and ridges formed patterns that made reality itself seem uncertain. Jake squinted, his eyes starting to sting from just looking. "Sir," Amy whispered, "the ship, it's dividing." And Jake stared at the display in stunned disbelief. The Eternal was splitting. First 2 vessels, then 4, then 8. Each one identical. The duplication continued, multiplying faster and faster until the space around the original filled with endless copies. "How many now?" Jake asked. Amy struggled to answer, tapping at her instruments. I can't tell. "Sir, every time I count, it changes. Sometimes it's 12, sometimes 50, sometimes hundreds." Pete was staring at his readings, brow furrowed. "Captain, I don't think those are actual ships." "What do you mean? They're not separate?" "My sensors show them as a single object. It's like they all exist in the same place at the same time." The voice of Commander Park echoed once more. Across the bridge but now, she wasn't alone. Hundreds of voices joined hers in harmony. Male, female, ancient, young, a choir of the lost. You have chosen extinction, they spoke as one. So be it. The alien fleet opened fire. 800 warships launched their full arsenal. A storm of destruction roared across space waves of plasma, fusion torpedoes, neutron beams. It was an apocalypse, enough firepower to shatter a solar system. Jake braced for the end. No ship could endure this, not even the Eternal. Multiplicity or not, there were simply too many enemies, too much raw energy. And then, the impossible happened again. The wave of destruction reached the field of human vessels and vanished. No explosion, no impact, no flash. The weapons from 800 alien ships simply disappeared or erased the moment. They touched the space surrounding the Eternal and its copies. Admiral Kether gaped at his tactical screen, stunned. His entire fleet had unleashed its might, and it had done nothing. The human ships floated, unscathed. Fire again, he bellowed. All ships continuous fire. The Armada obeyed. Beam after beam, missile after missile, everything they had was hurled toward the target. And still, the result was the same. Every attack dissolved, consumed by the space around the Eternal. It was as if the void itself had turned against them, devouring their weapons like a ravenous beast. On the Liberty, Pete Collins made a disturbing realization. Captain, I don't think those are copies of the Eternal at all. Jake looked at him. Then what are they? Pete swallowed. I think we're seeing shadows, reflections. The real ship isn't in normal space anymore. We're only seeing the parts that bleed into our dimension. Jake's thoughts reeled. You're saying it exists somewhere else? Yes, sir. I think the Eternal now exists in multiple dimensions outside our understanding of space and time. It's like trying to explain a sphere by looking at its shadow on a flat wall. Amy looked up from her console. Pale, sir. The alien ships are disappearing. Jake turned toward the display. The Zelthrian vessels, one by one, were turning. Transparent, like ghosts, fading into nothing. They weren't exploding. They weren't being destroyed. They were vanishing, starting with the ones closest to the Eternal. The erasure spread outward ship by ship like a wave. They're not dying, Amy whispered. They're being erased, like they never existed at all. Admiral Kether stood on the bridge of his flagship, frozen with horror, watching his entire legacy unravel in silence. Before him, Admiral Kether stared at the bizarre human vessel, the one that had erased dozens of his ships without ever firing a visible weapon. Pride and fear battled within his alien heart as he readied the order that would seal the fate of his entire fleet. Admiral Kether made his decision. The Zelthrian commander had dedicated his life to war. He had been raised with one lesson above all. Retreat was shame, and shame was worse than death. His people would rather perish with honor than survive in disgraced ships, he said coldly over the fleet's communication system. Converge on the human vessel. Maximum firepower. He will destroy this enemy or die in the attempt. 800 alien warships turned and began advancing on the Eternal. Each massive and armored vessel bristled with weapons. Together, they carried enough firepower to reduce entire planets to dust. Energy signatures flared across space as weapons charged and targeting systems locked on the Liberty. Captain Jake Morrison watched the final assault take shape with grim dread. Amy, he said. How many ships are moving in? It's all of them, sir, she replied. The entire fleet's changing position for attack. Pete Collins looked up from his engineering station, worry in his eyes. Captain, if the Eternal barely held off 40 ships, how can it stop 800? Jake had no answer. He stared at the mysterious ship, still alone in space, as the greatest armada in known history closed in. The Eternal looked small, almost fragile, surrounded from every angle by the monstrous Zelthrian force. Then something started to happen. The ship's surface began to ripple and melt. Flowing like liquid silver, curves twisted into unnatural angles. The vessel's form shifted in ways that bent reality itself. Jake squinted. His eyes stung just from looking at it, sir. Amy whispered, the ship is splitting. Jake turned to the main display and saw the impossible unfolding. The Eternal was dividing, copying itself. First 2 ships, then 4, then 8. The duplication continued until Jake lost track of how many vessels now filled the space where the single ship had hovered. "How many are there?" he asked. Amy worked at her console, trying to count. I don't know. It keeps changing. Sometimes I see 12, other times 50, sometimes hundreds." Pete Collins looked up, confusion etched across his face. "Captain, I don't think those are separate ships. My instruments still read one object. It's as if the same ship exists in multiple places at once." Then Commander Park's voice returned, but she was no longer alone. Hundreds of other voices spoke with her in harmony. In unity, aged and young, male and female, all speaking as one. "You have chosen extinction," they declared. The alien fleet opened fire. 800 warships released their combined arsenal in a single, devastating salvo. A storm of destruction lit up the stars, energy beams, plasma bolts, fusion warheads, enough to tear entire solar systems apart. Jake braced for impact. No ship, not even the Eternal, could withstand this. It didn't matter how many copies it made. There were too many enemies, too much force. But once more, the impossible occurred. The energy storm surged toward the field of eternal copies and vanished, not deflected, not absorbed. Gone. The moment the weapons reached the edge of the Eternal's domain, they ceased to exist. Admiral Kether stared at his display, disbelieving. His entire fleet had just fired every weapon they possessed, and it had done nothing. The human ships floated in space, touched. "Fire again," he roared. All ships, continuous fire. The Zelthrians obeyed, pouring every remaining shot into the ever-shifting swarm of human vessels. But the result remained the same. Every weapon disappeared, before it could hit. The space around the Eternal devoured it all, like some ravenous beast that fed on annihilation. On the Liberty, Chief Collins made a chilling realization. "Captain, I don't think those are actual copies at all." Jake turned. "What are they then?" "I think we're seeing shadows," Pete said slowly. "Reflections. The real ship exists in dimensions we don't understand. What we see is just the part that bleeds into normal space." Jake tried to wrap his mind around it. "You're saying it's multi-dimensional?" "Yes, sir. The Eternal has become something else, something beyond space and time as we know it. It's like trying to understand a sphere by only seeing its shadow on a wall." Amy turned from her station, her face pale. "Sir, the alien ships, they're starting to vanish." Jake looked at the screen. The Zelthrian vessels were fading slowly, at first growing translucent like ghosts. Then, one by one, they winked. Out of existence, not destroyed, erased. It began at the front, near the Eternal, spread outward ship by ship like a tide. The world around Admiral Kether began to dissolve. The walls of his bridge turned to mist, revealing the distant stars beyond. Looked around in horror as his crew faded, translucent figures whose voices grew faint and distorted. "What is happening to us?" his tactical officer asked, though the words sounded as though they came from the bottom of a deep well. The Admiral tried to respond, but found no sound would come. His own body was vanishing, becoming part of the void. Last thing he saw before darkness took him was the impossible human vessel, floating silently where his great fleet had once been. Then Admiral Kether ceased to exist. In exactly 3 minutes and 47 seconds, the entire Zelthrian Third Expansion Fleet was gone. 800 warships and every crew member aboard had simply vanished, erased from time and space, leaving behind only stillness, stars. In memory, the battle was over. Humanity had survived. But the silence that followed was more unsettling than war. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty, eyes locked on the void where the largest armada in galactic history had just been. No wreckage, no radiation, no signs of combat. "Any readings?" he asked quietly. Lieutenant Rodriguez checked her console, her fingers trembling. "Nothing, sir. Not even background radiation. It's like they were never there at all." This Many images of the eternal dozens of copies floating across space began to shimmer and collapse inward. Jake watched as they merged, slowly becoming fewer, until only a single ship remained. But even that one had changed. It no longer looked solid. Its hull flickered, ghost-like, and Jake could see stars through the structure. "Pete," he said. "What are your instruments reading?" Chief Collins frowned at the data, "Sir. The Eternal is going transparent. Its mass readings are dropping. It's like it's phasing out of our reality." Then, one final time, the voice of Commander Park filled the Liberty's bridge. Her tone now held a sorrow that struck Jake deep in the chest. "The threat has been eliminated, but we cannot return. Evolution demands sacrifice. Tell Earth Command that humanity's children now guard the deep places. We are no longer what we were, but we remember what we protected." Jake stepped toward the view screen, his heart aching. The world was beginning to fade around Admiral Kether. He could see through the walls of his bridge now, straight to the cold stars beyond. His crew members shimmered like ghosts, their forms becoming translucent. Their voices stretched thin and far away. "What is happening to us?" his tactical officer asked. Though the words sounded as if spoken across an immense distance, Kether tried to respond, but no sound came. His hands dissolved into light, and then the rest of him followed. The final image burned into his mind was the shape of the strange human ships, still floating where his proud armada had once stood, then dashed nothing. Darkness swallowed him and Admiral. Kether ceased to exist in 3 minutes and 47 seconds. The entire Zelthrian Third Expansion fleet had vanished. 800 warships and their crews were gone-aced from reality, leaving behind only quiet stars and vast empty space. The battle had ended, humanity had survived, and the silence that followed was more terrifying than any sound of war. Jake Morrison stood motionless on the bridge of the Liberty, staring at the void where the alien fleet had been. Just minutes earlier, 800 vessels had filled that sky. Now, there was nothing. No debris, no radiation, not even a whisper of interference. "Amy," Jake asked softly, "are you getting any readings?" Lieutenant Rodriguez slowly shook her head. "No, sir, nothing at all. It's like they were never there. Even background radiation levels are completely normal." Dozens of copies of the Eternal began to dissolve and pull inward, fading one by one. Jake watched as the false ships collapsed into a single form. But something was different. The final vessel seemed less real now, its structure hazy, shifting. "Pete," Jake said, "what are your instruments saying about the Eternal?" "Chief." Collins stared at his screen in confusion. "Sir, the ship's becoming transparent. I can see stars through its hull. It's like it's only half existing in our reality now." Then came the final message. Commander Park's voice filled the Liberty's bridge one last time, quiet, full of sorrow. Her words made Jake's chest tighten. "The threat has been eliminated," she said, "but we cannot return. Evolution demands sacrifice. Tell Earth Command that humanity's children now guard the deep spaces. We are no longer what we were, but we remember what we protected." Jake stepped closer to the view screen, heart pounding, hand reaching instinctively toward the fading ship. "Commander Park," he called, voice thick. "This is Captain Morrison of the patrol vessel Liberty. Can you—" There was only silence. Then finally, Commander Park's voice returned, quieter now, touched with warmth and gentle kindness. "We hear you, Captain Morrison. We have been watching your patrol ship throughout the battle. You have a good crew and a brave heart." Jake swallowed. "Commander, what happened to you? What happened to your ship and crew?" "The records say you all died 300 years ago." "We did die, Captain, but death was not the end for us. When the Eternal was lost during the Proxima incident, we faced a choice. We could accept extinction or we could become something new, something that could protect humanity. Even after our bodies were gone." Amy looked up from her station, eyes wet with tears. "Ma'am, how many of you are there?" "All of us, Lieutenant Rodriguez. 200 souls who chose to evolve rather than fade. We became part of our ship, and it became part of us. Now, we live in the folds between dimensions, watching. Pete Collins asked the question Jake had feared to hear answered, "Commander, can you ever come home?" Silence stretched, then Park answered quietly, "No, Chief Collins. We gave up our humanity to save it. We can never walk Earth's surface again, never feel the wind or the warmth of sunlight, never touch another soul. That is the price of what we became." Duh. Jake's throat tightened. "Commander, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you had to make that sacrifice." "Don't be sorry, Captain. We made the choice freely. Every one of us. We voted. We knew what it meant, and we still chose to go forward. We believed it was worth the cost." The Eternal shimmered as it grew fainter. Its structure was now nearly transparent. Jake could see the stars shining right through its hull. "Commander, before you go, can you tell us anything that might help humanity for the future?" "We are sending you what we can, Captain. Morrison, knowledge, technology, weapons, shields, engines based on principles your scientists have not yet begun to imagine. Use them wisely." The Liberty's come panel flashed. Data surged into the ship's systems, information pouring in faster than normal computers. Could register? Blueprints? Mathematics? Advanced energy fields? Theories that could change the foundation of science itself. "This knowledge," Commander Park continued, "comes with a warning. Power without wisdom leads only to ruin. Make sure your people understand. Strength must always be tempered with compassion." Amy wiped her cheeks, voice trembling. "Will we ever see you again?" "You will not see us, Lieutenant. But we will always be watching, whenever humanity stands at the edge of extinction. Whenever alien enemies threaten your worlds, we will be there. We are your guardians now, protecting you in the darkness between stars." The Eternal was almost fully invisible now. Its outline barely shimmered against the vast black sky. Jake stepped forward, speaking from the heart. "Commander Park, on behalf of all humanity, thank you. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for saving us. It was our honor, Captain Morrison. Live well. Build a future worthy of the price we paid, and remember, even in the darkest voids, humanity's spirit still burns bright." Then the Eternal vanished completely. Not destroyed, not gone, just made somewhere else. Somewhere human eyes could not follow. Jake stood in silence, his crew beside him, each one trying to grasp what had just occurred. The greatest alien fleet the galaxy had ever known, erased by a single ship, a ship crewed by the dead. "Sir," Amy said quietly, "what do we tell Earth Command?" The incoming transmission was still flowing. Data that could change the course of human history forever. He exhaled, his voice calm and sure. "We tell them the truth. We tell them that humanity does not stand alone. That out there in the dark, our guardians are watching. We tell them that even death can't stop the human spirit when it chooses to fight." He turned to face his crew, his eyes filled with conviction. "We tell them that freedom is never free. Someone always pays the price." The Liberty turned toward home, carrying with it the most important message in human history. Behind them, unseen, in the quiet folds of space and time, silent watchers remained, ready to rise again, when their people needed them most.